Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another one of our live panel discussions for the JeopardyFan.com. Once again, I'm Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating the discussion this evening. We have quite a panel, and once again, lots of different monies won on Jeopardy on our panel tonight. Let's go from right to left on my screen. First of all, we've got Julia Collins, who made it into the Tournament of Champions semifinals by the skin of her teeth this past week. Also, we have returning to our panel Josh Frumkin from Season 29, discussing things with us as well. Also from the tournament, Jim Curry and Jared Hall. And finally, once we get his video back, Arthur Chu will be joining us. We also have, once again, Brandon Saunders. Good to see you again, Brandon, as well as my co-blogger at the Jeopardy Fan, Jeannie Kenkel. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's see. We had 5 excellent episodes. The quarterfinals were this past week. By the way, hashtag is TOC2014, and I'm just going to start the tag everyone on Twitter who's joining us, and then you guys can retweet if you'd like. I think Arthur is having some small difficulties at the moment, but that's okay. So yes, we had 5 quarterfinals. The first one I'm going to let's go chronologically. Monday's quarterfinal was Ben Ingram, Rebecca Ryder, and John Pearson. Now, of our I don't think, well, I mean, Jeannie saw it in the audience, but everyone else saw it for the first time on Monday. What's it like, first of all, to the contestants? What's it like watching a show that you were sequestered for?
I thought it was fun. I'd been wondering, I knew the outcome, but it was fun to see it. I heard about it at lunchtime, so, I'm curious. What goes down?
Yeah, I got a pretty good report on what happened in all the games from my girlfriend, who's actually taking notes in the audience. And so I sort of knew a little bit of the play-by-play, but it's always good to see it in person and to see, some of the players, get to really show their stuff. Ben is just, he puts on a clinic when it comes to stuff like that. So it was a good game to watch.
Now, Arthur, just because you were having some difficulties and you missed our opening, we're just talking about Monday's game and how it feels like to see live a game that you were sequestered for to start with. And so that's kind of what was your feeling having watching Monday's game for the first time?
I actually had a hard time remembering what I had and hadn't seen. The whole day kind of blurred together of taping. My wife did kind of give me a play-by-play of what happened in Monday's game, and afterwards at lunch, everyone was talking about, everyone always challenges you with the final Jeopardy to see if you can get it. So I'd already, been challenged with it. But yeah, it was. Mainly, I was just so focused on my own game, and so, just relaxed after I won, and I didn't have to think about it anymore. The rest of the day kind of blurs together for me.
That's something fair to say. I'd say for sure. Now, I know it was said that Ben certainly. Ben, put on a clinic, and I'm going to ask Brandon and Josh mostly because the rest of you guys actually are probably going to chuckle silently to yourselves about this one. But how well do you think? What do you think Ben's chances may be moving on in the tournament?
I guess I'll go. I should say something and then look at everybody's face down in this bottom corner and see how they react. See if I can get some spoilers. But look, he's good. He won 8 games, which is amazing, and he killed on that episode. He knows his stuff. He's fun to watch. He's a good guy. Definitely, I'm rooting for everybody. But I think he probably should fare very well. Although you get to the semifinals of the TOC, everybody you're playing is tough. They've already, at least won a game or done well in a game against this kind of competition before. So it's, no gimmies, I guess, once you get to that point.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. Ben was one of those guys who right away I was like, he's getting a semifinal. Now I believe he has Sandy Baker and Joshua Brackage in the semis, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think from what I've seen anyway, because most of my expertise comes with season 30 and later. But I did catch a few of Ben Ingram's games in 2013. I feel that they actually have very different areas of expertise. I mean, they're all very, very good, obviously, but I think their strongest categories are in different things, and it's also going to come because I know Ben. Also, I've been pretty friendly with Ben over the past few months, and I've been getting to know his wagering strategy. And it's pretty interesting, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. All three semifinals, obviously, but I feel like that's going to be one of the most even matches.
Now, what did you guys all think of Ben's $100 daily double wager? I mean, if I'm never going to begrudge somebody for betting $100 if they feel that badly about a category or a question. But what did the rest? Would you guys have wagered a little bit more than $100 in Ben's case there?
I told him if you bet $5, it's basically the same as betting $100, only everyone makes a YouTube out of it. So yeah, no, $5 is the actual minimum. I never saw any point either go big or go $5. Those are your two options. No middle path. That doesn't really help you.
Yeah.
I have to refresh my memory on this one because I don't remember it at all.
Midway through Double Jeopardy, basically, what kind of animal are you? 1600. Ben hit the daily double, and he had it was 11, 6, 38, and 12.
Yeah, I mean that bet seems pretty fair. I mean, at that point, if you're that far ahead with about half of double to go, I think, as Arthur said, the two bets are either to go big or go completely microscopic. You try to, at that point, you're just trying to secure your lock. So betting an arbitrary 2,000, 3,000 doesn't really do anything either way.
I mean, you never want to hamstring yourself at that point in the game, unless you're Roger Craig. That's how you roll. I mean, that's it's a good strategy for him, but I would never do that, as I think we all. The secrets of how I play are no secret. So I don't know.
Okay.
Not for him.
Yeah, I mean, trying to get more money makes no sense at all in the tournament because the score doesn't count. So the only thing that matters is your lead. I always tell people that your lead should be the only thing that matters anyway, but especially in the tournament where the money literally disappears after the end of the game. So.
Yeah, and I'll also say that this is where the distinctions between the quarters and strategy-wise, the distinctions between the quarters and the semis come into play. Because if you're in the semis and you have to win your game outright, then it might make sense to wager if you feel confident on the category for a lock. Whereas, he didn't have to try and run up the score here. The other players are going to do what they were going to do, and if they, were to make the semis, that's fine. That's sort of independent of him. So, yeah, there's differences in how you can analyze the tactics between the quarters and the semis. So.
And I think even from a view of independent of run, if you look at the actual category, what kind of animal are you? The only one that they had seen up to that point before Ben hit the daily double was the mule, which is a triple stumper.
Yeah.
So at that point, you're kind of like, oh, what is this even category even? So I think, especially with a kind of like, it's not one of those where you always know what you're looking for. I think it was a pretty safe bet.
That's it looks like we're in mostly agreement on that one, so I think we're safe to move on. Moving on, I guess, to Tuesday's game, we had Ronnie Peffer, Andrew Moore, and of course Arthur. I know that Mr. Mattingly had his stats going around Twitter, and he had Andrew picked to win the whole thing, and he certainly kind of did not do as well as many people thought in his quarterfinal. Was that just because Arthur put up such a strong performance, or was there something else that maybe the numbers from the original run might have missed?
Yeah, well, sorry to be hogging all the talking, but one of the things I've talked to Mr. Mattingly, and one of the things I've noticed about his kind of thing is that it leaves out a big part of the game which you unfortunately can't quantify, which is the whole psychological thing. When he hit that Caspian Sea daily double, which was a pretty hard one. I mean, and it was at the very beginning of double, and just like Roger when he went for it against Brad and Ken, if you know you're up against Arthur Chu, who's a very strong player, it might get in your head pretty quickly, especially if you know you're at the beginning of the week and you want to try to set a high wild card spot.
No,
I mean,
no, I'm just wondering, Arthur, did you know that Caspian Sea Daily Double?
I was trying to think of it, and I was still thinking when he made his incorrect response, so I don't know if I would have gotten it. So he might have done me a favor by getting that. I think one thing, I'm going to recuse myself on like who's a better player when it's someone I played against, but I think one thing to emphasize that I think everyone can agree on is the TOC was very hard.
Yes.
And the difficulty level of the material was just, I think it was beyond most TOCs that I've watched, and it was certainly beyond the regular season that we all played in. And so something I had to adjust to very quickly was just understanding, hey, I'm not going to know a lot of these. And when you're used to being a very aggressive player because you know that you have a strong knowledge base, so you're going for those high-level clues, you're, you know, betting it all on those daily doubles, you have to really rapidly kind of just adjust to the fact that now you're playing where you, like maybe 40 to 50% you might just not know, and that guessing might be dangerous. And I had to force myself to clam up a lot of the time. And what I saw in the quarterfinals is a lot of very good players get themselves into this bad headspace because they started getting things wrong and couldn't make that mental adjustment to this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. You know, and I don't think, I think it's mainly like when you saw players dig themselves deep into the hole, like Drew Horwood did. That was, we talked about it with him afterwards. That was a psychological thing. That was like you get so freaked out because you're used to being able to play really well, making these tough guesses, and now you're at a material level where those tough guesses go against you most of the time. It was a really disorienting thing for me to get used to.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that actually the difficulty level of the material might have taken some of us by surprise. I mean, we were all expecting really tough stuff to be on the boards, but I think that, at least what I had looked at in past TOCs, I looked at all the past TOCs, and my general assessment was that year over year they were getting incrementally a little bit easier, and so I was expecting that trend to continue. But it definitely did not, in my opinion. Being up on the stage, sort of makes my assessment a little bit more biased. But I was taken by surprise, and I think other folks were too.
Yeah, I go ahead, Jim.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I definitely fell into that trap too. Just because, I was almost more worried about buzzing in too against like Julia and Joshua.
You kind of froze up. So.
Go ahead.
So I had a couple thoughts about that. One is that people were complaining a lot on the internet about how easy the regular season clues were after Battle of the Decades aired, and I think that the writers probably took that to heart and thought they're going to really put us through our paces. But I definitely felt like the TOC was the worst I've ever played. Hands down, no question, absolutely. And partly it was because I felt like I was going to die, but it was like it wasn't. It felt really ugly all the time. So that's it didn't. I never felt, and there were no moments when I was like, I'm really in my groove. This is going well. I was like, this is rough.
Anytime you have a week where there are two opera categories, I think there was the one maybe on Tuesday and then the final Jeopardy.
Yeah,
that's a tough week.
But as far as opera questions go, I'd say that Friday's final was relatively easy in terms of opera questions.
Yeah, it absolutely was. I think Mark and Sandy and I all agreed on that. Hansel and Gretel is not. It's not it doesn't necessarily spring to mind when you think to opera, but it's certainly not a deep cut. And if you, it didn't take too long to figure that one out.
Yeah. Let's put it this way. My mother was watching the game along with me yesterday, and she got that final correct. So, I mean, she'll usually get one or two a week, but usually not in opera in the Tournament of Champions. So.
I thought, I don't know if I'm like jumping ahead of something. I thought that the Final Jeopardies in general, you guys are talking about the difficulty of the board. I thought the Final Jeopardies in general were fairly gettable. All 5 of them, I didn't think any of them were like, I've seen I lost on a regular season one that was tough. I've seen ones, of course I would say that, but I've seen regular season ones that I feel are tougher than the ones I saw. So I don't know if you guys thought that like because the boards are so hard, they made the Final Jeopardies not impossible, so it didn't end in huge amounts of failure or something. I don't know.
Because I mean, they could have gone and like 2003, for example, when they made the finals really difficult. Everyone bet a whole bunch of money, and you had people making the semifinals with 0.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think they kind of realized that, and I think what they're thinking, which I kind of agree with, is that when you keep the the Final Jeopardies the same difficulty in the quarterfinals, which I think they did in accordance with the regular season, it makes for a more interesting kind of final thing, because then it puts more emphasis on the wagering, because then it's not always, oh, well, I'll bet that nobody will get it right, and so I play that way. So it still keeps the normal element of strategy that's in semis and in regular play still going, because what I find is that people always overcompensate, and if you look at the cutoffs, since they doubled the money for the Tournament of Champions, that's I think 8 Tournament of Champions, only 2 of them are above 10,000 at all, and I think only maybe 3 or 4 are under 5,000. So I think it adds an extra kind of element of keeping people watching during final, even when it's a lot game, even when people have 4,900 at the end of final, which is usually you're casted off in regular play. I think it adds a little extra watchability.
Now I know that. Sorry, go ahead, Julia.
I think it helps for PR if it seems like the degree of difficulty is consistent across the quarterfinals. That there's not the perception that one day didn't get a fair shake with Final Jeopardy.
Now, just for the sake, the cutoff, of course, was Julia's 9,100 this year. Now, I know that Keith predicted 12.4. I wish we'd had Ben on, because he declined to tell us what his projected cutoff was going to be when he was on last week. But I'm sure when he comes back on with our panel, I will make sure to ask him what his projected cutoff was. Now, I'm just curious, Arthur, Jim, Julia, Jared, what were your projected cutoffs when you were going in? I know, Julia, you didn't really think about it that much, but Arthur, Jared, or Jim, did you guys think about a projected cutoff?
Go ahead. Okay, well, I didn't really set a cutoff in my mind, but I didn't think it would go below around 9,000. So I just kind of thought that if I was below that, I would bet big. But I never really picked a number above that where I actually thought it would end up.
Okay.
Andy, just to clarify, I did think about it quite a bit. I think you're misremembering from last time.
I think I am misremembering for last time. Yeah. I am sorry.
It's that there's been such a range that it didn't make sense to me to pin down a number. I thought that was the fool's errand to think, oh, I have to be above 10,300, and that's going to be the magic. I thought that 0 to 20,000 is a pretty big spread in a pretty small sample. So that's I didn't get too hung up on a particular number, although I did think about it, and I thought about it when I was wagering.
Arthur?
Yeah, I'd actually concur with Julia there. I mean, I kind of had it in my head that if I had to, if I was in Final Jeopardy and I was going to risk going below like 10,000, I would think about it really hard on whether I knew the category, because just have the wild card in mind. But at the same time, I guess this might sound arrogant, but I was like, I hope I just get a lock going, and that was my plan, was to get a lock, because then I don't have to think about it, and I was so relieved that I didn't have to think about it. So that worked out, I guess. But yeah,
I think Arthur's having some technical difficulties again. Jared, can we just pop over to Jared and think? Do you kind of agree with what's been said so far?
I had a number in mind. I mean, I was just going, by probability. Where did I need to be just to have the greatest probability of advancing to the quarterfinals? And so I made a big wager in my match.
Mm-hmm.
That was partially driven by the fact that I felt really confident about opera characters. I mean, there's like between 15 and 20 different opera characters that it could be. And so I just was running through all those in my head, and I just, I felt pretty confident about it. And so that's what allowed me to make that big wager. If I had felt differently about the category, based on where I was sitting, I would have, probably just wagered to be above 10. But just to give myself, a lock on a wild card, I knew I wanted to be, close to 15. And so it just so happened that it was a favorable category for me, and I felt confident going big. And so, yeah, that sort of worked out.
Now, trying to get back to the going chronologically, because I think we've moved off on a slight tangent here. But I was under I heard afterwards that there was quite a long tape stoppage during Wednesday's game. Would I be correct in remembering that part?
Yeah, I think it was like, I don't know, 5 minutes maybe. It was the before and after category when. Yeah, the response was the good earth colors, and the clue used the word hues, I think, and apparently it had originally said colors, and they were going for tones, and I said colors, and they stopped for a while to review it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was happy that they rolled for Jim, but that was a bad 5 minutes. They had also stopped and restarted the intro at the beginning of the show, so we were standing up there for a really long time, which was not a good thing for me. Not to spoil anything, but they let me sit down during the breaks during the semifinals, and that really helped me from feeling like I was going to collapse on the stage.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, my next question for Julia and Jim, what's it like waiting to see if a wildcard score holds up in the audience?
I was pretty sure that I was done when I finished. I had like 5,600 or something, so I didn't have a whole lot of hope until like the very end, but it was still stressful.
Now, I know you didn't have as much of a wait to figure out if you had made it, Julia. Now, was that stressful for you, or?
I mean, I was not in a position where I was feeling anything but happy to be sitting down. Arthur, I think you were sitting next to me during the Thursday game, and I was like leaning against the wall with my eyes closed for a lot of it. I kind of thought, well, if I don't make it, that means I'm not going to have to stand up for an extended period tomorrow. And I was like, that actually provided me a lot of comfort. Just to fill you guys in, I think I mentioned, I don't know if I mentioned, so I had this virus, and I spent the whole week before TOC lying down, like not even sitting up, doing nothing. I watched TV, also with my eyes, or listened to the TV, and like prayed that I was going to feel better. And I felt better than I did the week before, but I was really sick at TOC, and I'm just like in the last week or two feeling like myself again. So I was kind of a disaster, and I was trying to tell myself that I wasn't sick anymore. Mm-hmm. So things are very hazy. They're very blurry. I don't know. I still had a good time, but I was kind of a mess. Remember, I don't know if Jared and Arthur, if you remember when my garment bag hit me in the face on the bus because I hung it up right next to me because I was so out of it.
Yeah.
It was like not firing. I was not firing on all cylinders. So
that was a signal that, yeah, it was not. Anyway.
was pretty pathetic. So, um,
Yeah, and props to Julia for still making it out. You know, I don't
Yeah, I
know.
was about to say, considering how sick she was, you fooled me.
Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, I'll think 16,000 on these boards before Final Jeopardy when you're feeling that way, I would say is probably more impressive than what Arthur did.
Thank you.
it's the power of adrenaline. Let's say that.
Now, for those of you who follow or look at what I have posted to Twitter, especially on Thursday, I got into a debate with Mr. Mattingly myself on Thursday morning about his predictions about Thursday's quarterfinal. Of course, I ended up with a significant amount of egg on my face when Terry did very well. Now, I would say would you guys agree with me if saying that she adjusted very quickly to the difficulty of the boards?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even say that it was because she, just like the rest of us, she was preparing presumably on the same, J archive material and episodes of Jeopardy on TV that we were, and so she knew, what the material would be. She just happened to perform really well on material that's a little bit easier. But I suppose there's maybe some folks were surprised, but I think she did really well, and I wouldn't have expected much different. So.
Yeah, I mean, I thought she played very well in the college tournament. I was happy that she won and didn't expect less of her than I did from other people. I mean, I have to say, Jim, not to point finger at you. People were saying a lot more things about Terry not being up to scratch than they were about you, and that is bogus. Since you guys, I mean, there's no reason to think that just because she's quiet that she was less ready to play than anybody else, and she's clearly very bright. Bravado is not the same as confidence and confidence in yourself.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of Terry's game. I mean, watching her in the college tournament, I think over her 4 games she averaged, I think 2 negs even, or maybe like 175 or something like that, which I'm always a huge fan of, and that's kind of the key, especially in quarterfinals. I think the key is basically just building up your money as fast as you can without just ever going back, and I think she did a really good job of that. I mean, she only negged once, but she only answered, I believe, I want to say 11 questions right out of the 60, but she got the ones right that she knew. She didn't neg, and of course, coming through on the final, I think that was a textbook way to play Tournament of Champions quarterfinal, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, with a difficult board, conservatism rules the day, and the best kind of confidence is being confident about what you do and what you don't know, and getting upset and trying to feel like, I need to be getting more correct responses than this. That's how you dig yourself into a hole. So Terry did really well. I mean, I actually remember, because I was on Twitter during the college championship, so I was, everyone was live tweeting, they got super involved in that. I just remember, a lot of people underestimated Terry the first time around, and she even said, this is something I kind of got hung up on, not to be weird about it, but she said, like, in an interview on the J board, that she almost gave the game away to Tucker Pope in the finals of the college championship, that she felt like she didn't really deserve to be there. She'd already, represented her school by making it to the finals, and Tucker wanted it more than she did, so she deliberately made a bet where if they'd both gotten it right, Tucker would have won, and he got it wrong, and she won anyway. And I was like, that's totally the wrong mindset. And, I think Terry's a great person, but I made a joke about it, but I told her, okay, now you're in the Tournament of Champions. Don't feel pity for any of these people. None of these people deserve your pity. Go for the throat. And so I'm really glad, I'm glad to see that a lot of these armchair quarterback judgments, just based on who looks like they deserve to be there or who feels like, you know, they've got the attitude of a champion. A lot of people like to make those judgments, and those people have had a lot of egg on their face just through these quarterfinals. And I'm glad that those snap judgments are being overturned. You know.
Now, let's see. I think okay. Jared, what was going through your mind on the Daily Double that you played on Friday?
The Shakespeare one?
Yes.
So I had two answers in my head, and one of them was the right one, and one of them was the wrong one. And the right one came to my head first, and then I changed my mind, and it was the one that came to my head first. And so, I mean, ultimately it didn't matter, but that was a big disappointment for me because I had studied a lot of that material, and I felt really confident on that category. But it was just sort of a mental mistake, ultimately. I second-guessed myself on Shakespeare's romantic comedies. And so, there's Shakespeare people, like people who are really into Shakespeare in my family, and so that was also disappointing to like let them down or whatever. But no, the outcome was fortunately wound up being okay. But if that had if my whole tournament had hinged on that, that would have been a major disappointment. So.
Well, in that case, I'm glad for you that it ended up working out for you. How many of your other family members actually got that Daily Double then watching it? I guess, did any of them tell you that they got it, or? Oh
yeah, well, so my mom knew it. My mom is actually an actress. She's done Shakespeare theater in the past, and so she knew it. My uncle, who's also a stage actor and who does Shakespeare in Chicago, knew it. And I'm sure other people, I'm sure my dad knew it, I don't know. But that was sort of a bummer.
Okay. Now the semifinals, we have on Monday, we have Julia playing Jared and Terry. Tuesday has Arthur with Mark and Rebecca, and Wednesday has Sandy, Joshua, and Ben. Now, would you say that I would say that's a pretty good mix in terms of, like, even with how the scores and the wild cards worked out in the quarterfinals. Now, do you think they made more of an effort to try to even out the semifinals a bit this time? Because there have been a lot of tournaments of champions where they have had a really killer semifinal. I know Roger Craig's semifinal.
I was just about to say that.
Comes
and
to
Mark
mind.
Runsvold, which was I think was a completely absurd matchup.
Now, would you guys say that that's a good mix then, in terms of the three semifinals? Strong, in terms of keeping them even. Now, what were your reactions when you found out the semifinals? First of all, to the players, I guess.
It had popped in my head when I was brushing my teeth Wednesday morning that I just thought maybe I'm gonna play Terry and Jared, and it just came into my mind, and then I was like, maybe that's what'll happen, and I didn't really think about it more than that, but it was weird because I don't know. There were a lot of constraints about how the matchups could be because a lot of people had played each other. Jared and Sandy and Mark had just played each other. Ben and Mark had played each other before. It was mixing it up the way it needed to be to kind of follow Jeopardy's informal constraints about people playing each other who had met in competition before. Didn't leave too many options.
Yeah, we were playing a little game in the green room trying to figure it out, just knowing that there's a few basic rules, like they're going to try to have a gender balance, so they're not going to have 3 women or 3 men playing each other. They're not going to want to pit people who played against each other before, and they're going to try to do some kind of seeding, which always makes me feel a little like I wouldn't want to be a high seed against a low seed or whatever, but I wouldn't want to be in a match that felt like it was inappropriately, I I wouldn't want to feel like I made it to the finals because I got the wrong matchups. So yeah, it made sense. I think the one player that I was really worried about going up against was Sandy in particular. And that's a category knowledge thing. That Sandy has proven that she's got very deep knowledge on film and media, a lot deeper than mine, especially for stuff that was around before I was born. And that's the kind of thing where if you feel like you have sort of buzzer dominance, then you're okay against going people with the same kind of knowledge base at you, but your nightmare is like someone who has deep knowledge about something you know nothing about, and then suddenly they can like swing the game in their direction just by getting everything you don't get, especially in a hard tournament. So, I hadn't seen anything from the players I was up against that made me think they had a specific wheelhouse category they'd get me on. So I felt good about that.
Well, I mean, obviously the hype going in is Arthur versus Julia, and that's the press now. I don't know if you guys have a sense beforehand that's, I assume they want to set it up a certain way. There's a narrative that they want. If you guys think, all right, well, there's no, like Arthur, there's no way I'm playing Julia, or vice versa in the semifinals, or if that just doesn't even, go through your head at all.
Yeah, I was approximately 100% sure they would put Arthur and me against each other in the quarterfinals or semifinals. Arthur, I would assume you probably figured this out.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be disingenuous to say that I did that.
Yeah, the one thought going through my head was, like, who is the third going to be? Who's the third person who's, quote-unquote, supposed to be there? And I don't know if they had that thought from the outset, but with the semifinals matchups, it seemed pretty clear they were thinking then. And I was thinking that beforehand. See, I don't know what goes through the powers that be's minds, but I disagreed with a lot of the armchair quarterbacking, but I agreed, like, Ben was like one of the strongest players, and if it wasn't going to be me or Julia, he would be the one to pick to win the whole thing, and so me versus Ben versus Julia made sense to me,
And I think that made sense to a lot of the armchair quarterbacks as well. Now, I guess I should ask, I don't know how many of you guys have been following the fake TOC 2014 hashtag on Twitter, but
I'm just gonna say that was my best idea ever. I'm not the first one. Best idea ever.
Yes, I'm a big fan of that. I think it's absolutely hilarious, and I'm almost curious to see what's in store for the fake TOC for the next week. Any, or even what have been the favorite things you've seen on that hashtag so far?
Anything about Alex doing any kind of dance, or rap, working. Alex and Sandy having an 80s rap battle. It's all anything with Alex. Those are my favorites.
Okay.
I love the one saying, like, if I played against Andrew Moore, we'd cancel each other out and take the categories from top to bottom, because that's such an inside baseball joke. Like, people know about me, but the joke is kind of people didn't know Andrew Moore did that first,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
I'm also going to give a shout out to my favorite thing, the Art Heart Japinga Tumblr.
Oh, yeah.
He's won the...
When I heard that, I thought...
Yeah, I made a mistake there, yeah. I don't know why. It was on TV in front of me, but... He is very good looking.
Yeah. I think, as I titled the post when I recapped on Friday, my mother seems to be a Japinga fan as well, so...
Mm-hmm.
I had talked to Mark for about 2 minutes before I very aggressively was like, well, we're going to be friends now, so I'm going to send you this stuff that you didn't ask for, and I'm just going to, like, be totally aggro about it. And so that was how things went down with him. He's really nice. He's a super cool guy. So, yeah, I don't know. There's something about him that is so compelling. I'm sure he thinks that I'm some sort of like a creepy stalker, but he's a great guy.
Yeah.
So, I know Keith has mentioned that there was one bet that took 15 minutes to come up with during this tournament. And our contestants stay silent. Maybe I should ask Keith about it. But
I'm not sure what he's talking about, but I'm afraid to.
Huh.
Yeah, I mean, I know what he's talking about, but I'm not going to say anything about it. So.
I feel as though maybe I should ask Keith privately for more information about that, because it sounds very interesting, and it sounds like the next week's matchups, are going to be absolutely bananas in some spots. So I'm quite looking forward to it. I want to. Jeannie's smiling and laughing at me, so I think that's probably a good sign. My notes are complete.
Question.
Okay. Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yeah, of course it's okay.
I wanted to hear more from Brandon on why he thought Runsvold and Craig's matchup was absurd. I wanted to hear more about that, if he had anything else to say about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, in my opinion, that was the one of the strongest TOC fields ever, and probably because I'm a big Roger Craig fan. But anyway, I think if you just look on paper, especially with a great example is this tournament, where they very obviously want to have a Chu, Collins, Ingram matchup. I would think, with the exception of maybe Tom Nisley, that the matchups that they would have wanted in the finals was Craig, Proc, and Runsvold. Statistically, those were the three best players over the course of the previous season. So I think to do that, especially watching the entire match, I mean, Roger, who ended up completely dominating the finals, only barely squeaked through ahead of June Pak because of his true daily double, in double Jeopardy. So I think that was a great match. I guess, in my opinion, it was like watching a one-day version of what the finals should have been. But it kind of upset me because when I had written out my brackets for that tournament, because I do it by round because I don't know how they're going to seed them, by the time it got to the finals, I was like, oh, this is completely done. Roger Craig is going to run away with this, which he did end up doing. But I felt that especially, it wasn't only that I thought it wasn't statistically a good idea. I also thought that it was against what they wanted too. So I just felt that was kind of weird. Also, I was 17 and not as good at math, so that might have had something to do with it too.
Now I'm curious, Brandon, to see what are your predictions for the semifinals.
Ooh, awkward because everybody's here. But yeah. Well, my thing was this: like when I was calling when I was making my brackets for the teen tournament, once I got to the semifinals and the finals, it got to the point where it became a little too hard to call it. So like for the finals, I said, well, Alan will win it unless Jeff can get 4 of the 6 daily doubles over the 2 days, then he'll win it. So I have a bunch of, I set it up like a big old conditional statement with ifs and if else's and thens and all that good stuff. But I'd say if I had to pick, especially with all the information I have now and then, I'd probably go Hall Chu Ingram, because I especially after what Julia said about how sick she was, I would probably pick Hall Chu Ingram. Maybe Hall Japinga Ingram. Like I said, it depends on the daily doubles, because I know such a big part of Arthur's game, which is why he won so much and why he ended up losing game number 13 or 14 or whatever it was because of the daily doubles. So, I mean, that's the thing about the Tournament of Champions. Usually I can just call them right away. Yeah. But with the Tournament of Champions, everybody's so good, and they, especially over the past few years, they've been doing such a good job of evenly matching everybody's. It's going to come down to what the categories are in the daily doubles. Sorry, non-committal answer.
Yeah, I mean, again, also as an outsider, I think I agree. I mean, I'm hoping Julia puts together a Jordan-esque, 98 finals with the flu, pulling it out kind of performance. Because I think it would be great to see with all apologies to Jared or whatever. Of course, it happened like a couple months ago, but it'd be great to see Arthur and Julia and Ben, just because I've gotten to know him a little bit. in the finals. But I really am just rooting for good games. I mean, I think we'll have 3 good games, and that's all that's all you want are 3 competitive, exciting games, or 5 really for the whole week. So
You'll get good games.
good.
Oh yeah.
Spoiler, you'll get good games.
Spoilers.
I mean, to go back to what you were saying, Brandon, I watch, the tournaments when I see them, and I almost never will pick anybody because I think, these people are good. They're here because they're good. I mean, sometimes, like you said, Roger dominating that his TOC finals, but to discount anybody is absurd. So it's it's like, what beef do you have with anybody personally that you root against them? That's so crazy.
And that's the thing, because especially with the last few tournaments in the Battle of the Decades, where I know personally a lot of those guys, I'll pick somebody, and then every time the person I didn't pick gets an answer right, I'm like, no, wait, I changed my answer. My dad's like, Brandon, you got to shut up. I'm watching Jeopardy. And that's basically what it is. I mean, I just do it kind of as an exercise in statistics, but really, especially with Tournaments of Champions and these mega tournaments, it's just so hard to pick that I usually just it's basically just throwing darts at a board, really.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely online. I mean, I know Arthur got a lot of whatever, hatred for whatever stupid. For being the evil Jeopardy champ who changed the the history of the game or whatever people said. So I'm sure that there are haters out there who are whatever, which is annoying. And I don't think I've seen it as much online during the TOC as I did during the runs, which I mean it's a shorter period of time, I guess.
Yeah.
Screw them, whatever.
Speaking of changing the game, I know we have some first-time panelists here, and I know a couple weeks ago on this podcast we had the rumor about ties no longer existing come out. So how do you guys all feel about the distinct possibility that there will no longer be ties allowed on Jeopardy come a couple weeks from now?
Do we know, if they change it, are they going to change the tiebreakers to like what they do for tournaments where they do like a sudden death question?
Our best guess is that is going to be the case, where there will be a sudden death question.
Okay. And yeah, I think that's exciting to watch. I think that it's lousy for the contestants who might end up in a tie otherwise, but I guess it's exciting to watch, even though that's kind of a rough way, I guess, to end up losing if you go that far and you do well enough to at least tie.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I can take credit for it. All I did, like I said, was watch Keith's videos and do what the video said. But I would say, like, all the people who complained about it, like, if it's a logical thing for contestants to do and they end up doing it a lot because everyone knows it, then the logical thing is to change the rules. You can't fault people for doing what's rational, especially when it's like, oh, it's not good for the game if you have ties. Well, if I'm playing for thousands of dollars, it's good for me.
Yeah.
You can't. The point of having a cash prize is to incentivize people to do what's good for them in that moment. So it's a logical change for them to make. I wish they'd made the other change, which is to put the category on the screen for the viewers at home to make the forest bounds less annoying. I think that would have helped me dodge a lot more hate than the tie thing. But whatever changes they make, I'm fine with. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, and I know I would also not blame you, Arthur. I would also blame Keith, to be honest. But
Oh man.
yes, no, I would, and even my own brother has said that Keith was the spiritual leader of the bet for the tie brigade. So.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like I think he had it down perfectly. Watching it, it's great because you always want to see the tiebreaker and everybody's on the edge of their seats.
Yeah.
But especially, because right now I'm doing a little project on the study of extra long streaks, 6+ games, and there's such a benefit to betting to tie consistently. So it takes out such a big part of not, I guess, each game individually, but for the health of a streak as a whole. That takes out such a big part of it. That's like almost like raising the minimum bet on a daily double and saying, oh, well, you're going to have to risk at least $1,000. It's such a big part of betting.
Yeah.
It'll definitely make things more interesting for people who, I guess, who go on with that knowledge already.
But yes, I would definitely agree that there are certainly advantages to, or there were advantages to betting for the tie, especially once astute people realized you were betting to tie, it can all obviously affect what they bet, and it works out for you. And we're actually, I think we're almost at the 50-minute mark, which is longer than we normally go on for here on our broadcast. But I think we had a good discussion tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for taking part tonight, and best of luck to you guys, or best of retroactive luck, I should say, to you guys in the semifinals and the finals. Thank you once again, Julia, for coming on. I'm glad your audio worked this time for us. That's very nice to hear.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Moving on, thank you, Josh, for finally being well enough to join us again. I know you were sick for a couple weeks and had to cut out of a couple panels. Thank you to Jim. Best of luck. I think you have finals coming up, and good luck with that.
I'm with you, Jim. Finals brothers.
Best of luck to you as well, and thank you for all the data and the numbers you've provided for us in the discussions tonight, Brandon. Thank you, and good luck in the semifinal against Julia on Monday as well. And then Arthur, thank you for joining us. I know it must be you've got a very you're probably very busy. I should ask you before we go, how's the documentary coming along?
They're coming back into town to film reactions to the semifinals and finals this coming week. So
okay,
we will see.
Cool.
But yeah, I'm not very plugged into. I'm the subject of it, but I'm not plugged into what they're actually doing. So I'm gonna wait and see as much as anyone else. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
I'm kind of looking forward to actually seeing the outcome of the documentary for sure. So, I can't quite think of anything else that. Does any? I always ask before I log off if any single panelist has any specific questions for any other panelists before we go logging off on the panel tonight. And at this point, I think I may also try to see if I have anything in my email from anyone who might be interested in asking a question. I'm not sure.
This is dangerous for us to ask questions because I'm still trying to think what's a spoiler and what isn't. So I'm going to refrain.
Okay.
What were you thinking when you did that in the finals?
Well, it looks like we are, in fact, there is no nothing that looks like has been posted to my inbox. So it looks like that we don't have any viewers with any questions. So at this point, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. We're just trying to, at this point, come up with a date that works to discuss the semifinals and or the finals. So you'll hear about that on our recaps at thejeopardyfan.com over the next week. Thank you all for tuning in. Thanks once again to the panel for taking part. Have a great night.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.